Okay, so our block ended up a little bit bigger than I wished, but it's okay. I can make it work for how I want it to, because all our backings are cut at 18 inches, and so is our batting for this quilt as you go process. One thing I wanted to show you is you get puckers, and this is my one little pucker. The rest I took care of that were here and here and here. It probably should be pressed again on the front side with some starch. When you flip it over, and you see how my seams are kind of weirded out here, if you snip just to before your stitch line, and you can kind of control your puckers. This one, I'm not quite sure of a good way to do that. So generally we'd be basting this to our quilt back and batting right now, but we're not going to because of our points on the outside. So we're going to sew our first border, excuse me, my words escaped me, onto here. So again, as you had seen in the previous, when we were putting our points together, marking that line where your point comes. Mark your lines on all your points. Then this is backwards because you're going to sew with your border, your small piece on the bottom. But this is important so that you can get these points done. Okay, so it'll end up being maybe a scant 1/4 inch, but that's okay. And we'll trim. I cut my border pieces at 2 inches, and I'll end up trimming them, which I don't like to do, but we will. And they're 2 inches by 21, and you need them long for the way I do this process for getting my miters. So your first two are going to be sewn on edge on opposite sides of each other, so only to the corners of your quilt. And while we're here, we're going to start the basting process. So after we get those done, without having to move the camera around a lot, I'm going to show you how I start basting. This is my 18-inch back. You can pick any color you want, remember, it doesn't have to even match. So take, I think I need to zoom out, inch tape here on the corner. I'm sure you saw when I zoomed my camera. This is not a conventional method. I saw this from Leah Day on one of her videos. I tried it and I love it. Start with the tape on either side. Any kind of tape will work. Painter's tape, masking tape, I think work the best. They release better from your fabric. Just give a tiny littlest tug, the tiniest little tug. Okay, then take 2 more, go top and bottom, and give the tiniest little tug. Also, okay, so now you look like you got some puckers. Well, we're going to go opposite corners. When you're taping, go opposite of each other. Give it just a slight little tug to make a good entente. And the opposite 2 corners. It should be good and snug that way. You might have to adjust just a tad bit. And this one came untaped. That'll happen. It's alright. Just fix it. Don't sweat the small stuff. Ever, ever, never. Then your batting will go directly on top of that. And you're going to do the same process. Square this up real nice, because these are exactly the same, 18 inches square. Now for batting, I like to tuck under the tiniest little piece of tape and put that on the batting side, because it makes it for easier release, and I don't snug too much on this one. And tape right over. And then the top and the bottom. Whoops. This, because when we release the tape, you want to pull from this way out, not in. You're more likely to tear your batting that way. Pardon me. Allergy season is arriving here in northern Minnesota, and it's starting to affect me, but that's all right. And then our corners. So this is ready to go for when we're done putting on our edges, and I'll show you the next step. So sew your seams down on your block, and set your stitches. I put this one on backwards, lest it be. Set your stitches and press your seams open, and then I'll meet you back here, and I'll show you how to put on the other two sides and where to start and stop your stitches. Alrighty. Okay, one really important thing I forgot to mention. When you hit your corners, please make sure you back tack. Okay, that's really, really important. So now we're going to do our next two edges, and this time when you start and stop, you want to start and stop at your stitch, and please be sure to back tack, and then press her open. Set your seams, press it open. Do that to both sides. Start and stop on your previous stitch lines, and you'll have it'll be good. It'll be good. Yeah. I'm just excited because this one's almost done. We can go on to our next block. Okay, so everything's lined up, ready to go. I know you're asking, what are we doing with these crazy corners? I'm going to show you how I miter them. What I do is flip this over, flip it back open. Yeah, flip down, and this seam will pop open just a little bit, and you can kind of go to your inside seam right here, but it won't matter, you still have to fidget. And so when you pull it back up, fidget this corner, make sure that's nice and mitered at a 45, and then you're going to line this tail with the edge of this to make sure that that 45 is perfect in there. Almost there. This is just a little fiddly part, but don't pull, don't stretch, just work it very carefully, because if you pull too much, you'll stretch your fabric, and once you press this, you have that beautiful 45-degree angle. Now I'm just going to pin this for now. Give it a little press, and I'm going to do the other corner. What you can do, if you so choose, I like to hand tack these, but not until later. You can hand tack it now, but I want to wait until there's more stability so I don't stretch. Or you could machine stitch just a little tiny stitch down there. That doesn't look like a normal quilt if you stitch it, so doing a little blind stitch on that is better, and I think it's better to do it with the whole quilt together. Okay, so now you want to go through, you want to have your edges flipped up and center your quilt. Like I said, this block ended up a little bit bigger than I wanted it to, but it's okay, it's going to work for us. And we're going to baste it. I'm going to show you how I baste. You start with basting a quilt just like a regular quilt. You go from the middle out. And I like to put my pins in all different directions. You can use regular safety pins. You can use regular stick pins. And the reason for taping the back is because it's keeping it snug. Now, if you're doing this on a table, put something underneath, a piece of cardboard, anything, because your pins can scratch the table, especially if you have a really nice wood table. You don't want to do that. Okay, so these guys I'm kind of going in the kitty corner directions because I want to leave these pins in when I quilt. This one I'm probably just going to quilt in the ditch around our triangles. So now we have 4 in. I have my normal foot in there. Okay, so then once you have your center kind of tacked down, work in a corner outward. I almost stepped on the dock. So we'll go that one that way because it's big enough. This one I'm going to go this way. If it's squares you're working with and you're basting, I usually go one this way, like this would be a square, and then the next one would go this way. So I alternate them. And then this one is that way, so I'm going to go this way. Actually, I want this one up and down. These, I'm going to go this way. And you can continue doing that. Also, while you're basting. What people are really nervous about is when you quilt, your batting and your backing kind of like to come together. So, to fix that issue, tuck this guy up. And run a pin in your corner because we're not touching the corner through your batting and your backing. You want to go close to the edges because what we're going to do to base this before you quilt it is we're going to stitch in the ditch all the way around our frame. And this will keep your batting from shifting. Your batting and your backing. Yep. So that one went that way. I'm going to go this way on this one. Actually, I'm going to go this way. And this one, I'll put this way. Pinning rule of thumb is within a fist, depending on how you are doing. I'm going to go this way. What your quilt pattern is. I try to pin so they're not in my way while I'm quilting. Free motion quilting, I like a good basting. I'm just learning that myself. I've been working on it really hard. Okay, so that half is done. This one we're going to go this way. So once you have this pinned, go ahead and do your ditch, stitch in the ditch along your frame, and then you can take the pins out of your edge because they'll no longer be affected, and you're ready to quilt. Whether you're going to hand quilt or machine quilt, it'll be completely ready to go. And once you have that done, you can tack these down if you like. The only thing I'm going to ask, don't tack it to your batting and backing. Because we're quilting as we go, we need this open. Do not stitch beyond your border. Please. Unless you want to call this done and, baste it up and use it as a table mat, that's an option. Quilting is an option. Quilting is a choice. Several methods and techniques out there that what works for one doesn't always work for the other. And colors are a choice, and shapes are a choice, and it's awesome. It's totally awesome. So just enjoy it. Find what you like, find what works for you, and do that. Don't stick with a technique. Learn several people's techniques, because you might find you might think, oh gosh, this is awesome. New techniques come out all the time, and new rulers come out. Not that you need them. I don't use them. Maybe one day I'll have a collection, but I don't right now. But if they work for you, use them. If you feel the need to use them, use them. Like I said before. And definitely try different techniques, because you might find something better or easier, or it's just one little thing that works so much better, and it'll improve your quilts. So these guys, I just sort of just tuck up in there until I'm ready to quilt. So now for untaping, we're going to untape. I'm going to go down this edge just a tissue bit here. Usually 3 or 4 down an edge will work. And you guys can't even see on that side, so I'll just stop it there and come onto this side, and this side's pinned in already except for this corner. I'm going to pull back this tape carefully and just work this carefully. This happens to be a really super sticky roll. You might distort it a little bit, but it's nothing noticeable. Holy buckets. This tape is very sticky. Okay, so we're untaped and we're pinned and ready to go on that side. Same thing all the way down, all the way around your quilt. Carefully pull that off of your batting. If you don't care for doing it that way because you don't like how it tears your batting, please don't do it that way. Stick it up on the wall, just leave it on the table, however you want to do it. I just find it keeps us from puckering in the back. Come on off of there. And because I'd like to show you the back and how nice and snug it'll be. That one, I don't know if you can see, I still don't feel like it even folded over on some of these, but that's alright. Okay, so you're done basting your back. If you want, you can put one more in the middle, but that's where our big bump is. And so you'll have these pins running along the edge, super, you know, right literally around the edge, and it's alright. So go ahead and stitch around your frame. I wasn't going to show this part, but I decided that I better. I've switched to the normal foot. I'm still in center position because that's where I like to stitch and ditch at, because I can see better. We're going to stitch along this line. We're not starting at a corner because corner is a little bit too obvious. Also, when you line this up, pretty good. Put your foot down. You might want to use your hand wheel to make sure you're in that ditch area. And for your first stitch, you don't want to back up on your quilting. You want to pull your thread up, because that'll get knotted and tucked into our quilt from the top side. And that way it is a heck of a lot less noticeable. Okay, that didn't want to quite go under. So just still start with your threads to the back or the side. I kind of like to put them over there. And now you're just going to follow inside that stitch in the ditch is what they call it. And follow it along. Take your time so you need to stay in control of this. You'll pick up speed as you go. You'll get practice at it. And the reason we're doing this part, which seems quite odd, instead of quilting from the middle out, with the method that I do, I haven't given a name or anything. It's the quilt as you go thing. With doing stuff this way, I get less of those under wrinkles and less puckers. So let's go around the world here. If it looks like your needle's going to hit, just give your fabric has a little bit of room there, if you can see that move. Just give it a little tug if you think it's going to hit. You can use the same color on the top and the bottom. You can switch your thread colors around if you prefer a matching color on the back. I'm using the same on the top as on the back. It's not going to be noticeable on the front, but it'll be contrasting on the back. Not much, just a very subtle. Okay, so we're coming up to our corner, and I don't know if anybody knows this. There's lines on your foot. Here and here. They're on your quilting foot as well. These marks that are straight across from the needle, those are your needle positions. So if you're not sure where you're at, you can use help, or they can help you as a guide. Now make sure your mitered corner goes under there good. A couple more stitches. Almost there. Okay. Now this is lined up. I don't think I can go in any closer to show that. It doesn't want to. Quick focal point. Okay. Do you see the line right there? And it's on both sides, and it matches right up with my fabric. And let's go zoom back out real quick. There we go. So I'm at that corner. I'm going to leave my needle down, pick up my foot, turn, and we're right on track for going down the next side. Make sure you're feeling for those pins. Remember, we put those pins under there, so they're not going to go under your foot. If you feel like it's going to go up there, your foot's going to travel on top. Take a second and move your pin. It adds a little bit more thunk because we're going through several layers. You can definitely use a walking foot. I don't have a lot of practice. I have a lot of practice quilting, but not with a walking foot. If you're doing super thick stuff, it's a good idea to use a walking foot. It helps put your fabric through evenly. So I'm told. And I believe it. To me it was bulky and I couldn't see very well with it. It's preference, personal preference. Remember, quilting is a choice and an opinion. Okay, slow down, coming up to our corner. One more. One more. Alright. Pivot. When you stitch in the ditch, your stitches should be virtually invisible. They may go out a little bit, but it's okay. I believe Quilt As You Go is so much easier. I think you have so much more freedom to do free motion quilting, even stitching in the ditch with Quilt As You Go methods. Especially on a small machine that has a small throat. This is your throat right here. It's not very big. My fist barely fits in there. So, and I like to go big or go home. As far as quilting goes, generally queen size quilts are lap quilts aren't so bad, but the queens are quite difficult to manage and not get your backing all messed up and mangled. And there is nothing worse than picking out quilting. Okay, we're going to come to our corner here. One or two more. One more. If you're not comfortable with your foot pedal doing that, if you have a needle up, needle down button, please use that. That'll do one stitch or half a stitch actually at a time. It'll bring it up, bring it down, and you can get it that way. I felt the pin. I wanted to give it just a little turn. So I've been thinking about our next block. I have to fix our actual first block. I think I'm just going to redo that. Here's a question. How many of you actually quilt for yourselves? Or how many quilts, out of the bazillion of quilts, if you're an avid quilter, have you made and kept for yourself? I'm not talking about your family, your sons, your daughters, your fathers, your mothers, your brothers. I'm talking about for your actual self, for your home. Because I actually only have one. And these ones, this one's kind of for me. Actually, it's for my husband, sort of. His motorcycle that he bought last year wasn't a motorcycle, it was a pull-behind camper. And so I've been making quilts for it. And this is part of the fabric selection for that. So this is a quilt that is staying in my immediate household. One more. Okay, I'm going to show you the needle up. Not that you can see my button, but no hands on the machine. See what I mean? Half a stitch. And you bring it right back, push it again, and it goes down. And I shouldn't have done that with my foot up. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's okay. We'll be alright. That was a no-no. Alright, I have a thread here. I don't want it caught up in there. And this is our tail. This is where we started. And I'm just going to go over that just a bit. Right, like maybe two needle up, and we're going to pull that through. And so when I do the other one, or when I tie these all off, I'll use a thread and I'll use a needle. And so leave these long enough because you're going to need to thread them on your needle. And I'll bring that through and see where if you would back tack. I can get that up there. If you were to back tack, it'd be super dark. See, I'm not even perfectly straight, but it's all good. And this, now you can quilt any way you would like. And do I have a thread and needle here? Up here in my basket. Let's zoom out a little. One more. There we go. And if